And welcome back to Wrestling Pops. This is Michael talking to you about some wrestling and some stuff I fancy, things that I thought were interesting. I know it's been a while, and that is a-okay. But just as things pop up, I'll be talking about them here in the wrestling world. And this episode is one I have actually been thinking about doing for a while, and it's been a while since I've done an episode. So this episode is something that was even before that. I created the thumbnail. Had it in the works. It's just a random thought I had, and then a recent episode of Dark Side of the Ring kind of just piqued my interest once again to come back to it. So this episode is about the different identities or different characters or gimmicks or whatever you want to say, the different faces of Foley. This is about Mick Foley and the characters he had, and it's not just that though. Something struck me. I mentioned Dark Side of the Ring. In Dark Side of the Ring, which was very well done. It was about Hell in a Cell, and the iconic moment. And again, in that, Mick talks about how he felt like he was remembered just for that moment. He worried about that, which I don't know. Maybe he does think it's true. Maybe some people think that's true. I don't think so. I think wrestling fans really focus on everything in Mick Foley. Mick Foley had a lot of great moments, uh, but he said that was his worry, was that that one moment was the only thing people, that like that was the top. Maybe it is the top, but watching that, realizing like he wins the world championship after that, the Rock at the Royal Rumble, he's still a WrestleMania main event in the future. He's still got matches in the future, which in the Dark Side episode they talked about maybe he shouldn't have done and maybe shouldn't have. Um, but there's a lot to Mick Foley, and it kind of made me sad when he said that, like, "Hey, this is the one thing people are going to remember." And I don't know if that's true. And one of the other things before watching that episode, and the reason I thought about doing this was because Mick Foley had three very distinct gimmicks, characters, whatever you want to call them. Three very distinct characters: Cactus Jack, Mankind, and Dude Love. And those three are so iconic, and a lot of wrestlers have different gimmicks. They switch or there's a variation throughout their career, but none have ever been so important, I think, for the time, for Mick himself and for the people he was working with. Um, and also just like remembering them, like they're very distinct. Like that was his whole thing, was which one is he going to be tonight at a certain point. As you know, in the Royal Rumble, I think it was '98. All three Mick Foley characters appeared. Um, yeah, like the three faces of Foley, I think are so important, and I want to discuss them a little bit, also because of what they did for other people. Um, so, this week's episode, we're going to talk about the three characters of Mick Foley. Um, and we have to start with the first one, really. And it depends on how you look at first one. I know in '85, or before he really broke ground in wrestling, he was doing Dude Love stuff. But the first one, that Japan, WCW, ECW, all that stuff that he really went by, Cactus Jack. Which when I was looking into stuff for this episode, and I'm not a wrestling historian, by the way. If some of the details are wrong, you put them in the comments. Let me know some more information. I want to learn. But um, his first match, 1986, Clarksburg, West Virginia, which I always remember. I think it was on the loading screen of something, or it was in a magazine. And obviously, I'm, being from West Virginia, a big thing about West Virginia is we're so surprised, I think, when we see people on TV or um, in Hollywood or whatever, that are from West Virginia, or music or athlete or whatever. It's just like a sense of pride. Um, but seeing that, he went under the name Cactus Jack for that match. So his very first match is Cactus Jack. He would go by different names, but starting later in the '80s and then until he goes to WWF, WWE, he really uses that name. So, um, Cactus Jack, the first one, um, and I'm going to come back to it. And there's a reason I'm going to come back to it. So he wrestles through all that stuff, right? He goes through Japan, he goes through WCW, ECW, wherever else he wrestled. There were other promotions that were listed. I just didn't write them down. Um, but then he is brought into, at the time, WWF to work against The Undertaker. And they needed a foe for The Undertaker. And this is where Mankind is brought in. And I'm going to start with Mankind, and I'm going to come back to him as well. So there's kind of a journey here. So the first one I mentioned, Cactus Jack. The first one I want to really dive into, excuse me, is Mankind. He's brought in because he's not overly the typical Undertaker opponent. He puts his body at risk. Um, Even in the Dark Side documentary or other things, Vince was not keen on like bringing him in the first place, but they did, and he really made it work. Um, and one thing about Mick Foley that's crazy is that early run of Undertaker, where he's brought in just for the Undertaker. So many great matches that I mean I vividly see that feud in my head. Like there are a lot of feuds that happen in wrestling and you kind of forget about, but like I remember that. I remember the Undertaker going up against Mankind where he's wearing the brown suit and he's ripping his hair out and he's in the boiler room and all that stuff. I also remember him going up against like Shawn Michaels. Like I remember him wrestling, which is crazy because another aspect of this whole thing that I want to mention is the people he worked with. He really elevated. How many wrestlers do you hear they talk about him and it's like, man, this guy really, he was a great champion, he was a great wrestler, but he also put people over. Now, The Undertaker, obviously that's why he was brought in, and Undertaker was already established. But that feud and something else that would happen later also really solidified part of Undertaker's career. Like, mentioning Hell in a Cell, Undertaker was also a part of that. Um, if there's someone else in the role, minus Kane, does anybody, is it as memorable or does it make as much sense? Not really. So that first run of Mankind really, really, really with The Undertaker really helped, I think, elevate him a little bit more. Um, as we move forward into the 90s, the next character would be as a result of the World Tag Team Champions. So this is 97. So Mankind brought in for, but in early 97, Stone Cold needs a tag team partner. I believe he was partners with Shawn Michaels. Tag team titles vacated, from what I read on Wikipedia. And Mankind offers to be Stone Cold's partner. And Stone Cold, who was ascending at the time, like Stone Cold's pretty over, still hasn't won the world title yet, I believe, but is very much a big part of the show, becoming more popular. Stone Cold looks at Mankind and says, I don't want to team with a freak, or doesn't want to team with Mankind. So then, he doesn't want to team with Mankind. So then, so Mick has this other character, Dude Love, who he apparently had before he got into wrestling. And it was a very short-lived character on TV. But Dude Love dressed in tie-dye, dancing, hands on knees, all that stuff, sunglasses, kind of the hippie look. Um, Different theme song, different vibe from Mankind. Mankind is supposed to be a kind of crazy character. Dude Love is just good, fun-loving, is a face character, so to speak. So then he wins the tag titles with Stone Cold. So right there, two characters, Mankind, working with the Undertaker, helping solidify the Undertaker's role even more, making, putting him over. And then an ascending Stone Cold Steve Austin, which everybody knows the history of Stone Cold. Stone Cold's run is legendary. It's what you think of it, like you can vividly think like, man, that seems like it was a long, long time. Stone Cold was there a kind of a short time on top, yet it seems so long because it was so big. Like he was such a huge star, one of the biggest, if not the biggest star in wrestling history. And Dude Love is helping work with it, as a tag team. So right there along the way, as he's ascending, who's there to kind of keep it going. And I'm not saying like he's responsible for it. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is he's worked with the Undertaker. The Undertaker that elevates him more. Stone Cold, same thing. So one of the, I would say, best parts of history in WWE, Dude Love, Mankind, Mick Foley. He's working with all the top guys and helping make them even better. Moving forward into '97, there's a Raw in September where they're on the Titantron. There's Dude Love, there's Mankind. I can't remember. I think there was someone interviewing, or maybe it was someone else. I don't remember who it was. But at the end of it, we see the third character, and he makes a return. So at the start, I mentioned Cactus Jack, but for the first time in WWE, I believe Cactus Jack has appeared. And if I'm wrong, again, let me know. But it seems like such a big deal. Like this guy has wrestled from Japan, WCW, ECW, all over the place, all these different places, and now in WWE he is there, and he is the hardcore guy, the different. He's a little bit different than Mankind. Mankind's more of the tortured character. He's more of like Stone Cold said, a freak. Dude Love is a fun-loving guy, and then you have Cactus Jack, who's all about just beating people up and being hardcore. And the original Mick Foley thing, right? Like that's what he started with, and now he's in WWE with that character. And that's so funny because at the now it's like such a nod to or the people that watch indies or read dirt sheets or whatever it may be, the smart quote unquote fans, boom, it's such a big deal. Like it's such a nod to that. And it was done so well. Who's he going up against in '97 in that moment? Triple H. 1997, all this stuff, an up and coming, right? There's the story, the current call, all that stuff with Triple H, but Triple H is not, the 2000 Triple H yet. Like he is still Shawn Michaels' friend. That's where he is. So, boom, he's working with Cactus Jack in the debut, and Triple H, I believe, has mentioned in like interviews for WWE documentaries or things like that that Mick was like very instrumental in his elevating, and I believe it. Right, the debut of a new character of Cactus Jack, of the character he used the name the longest outside of WWE. Boom, he's using it against a Triple H and helping put him on the map. So just like that, you have Undertaker, Stone Cold, and Triple H, three different characters, all working, with this guy, and he's making him look good. And at the same time, he's proving himself as well, or at least I think a lot of people did. A lot of people thought he was proving himself. This is where things get like shaky with Mick, though. I don't know the order of where he goes into different characters or whatnot, but he starts. This is we're moving forward. I think it's '98. That's when Hell in a Cell happens, and he's back at Mankind, but he's a different Mankind. Um, and there is a stark difference, I think, between the Mankind that wore brown and the Mankind that wore like a tattered dress, sleeveless dress shirt and a tie. Um, the first Mankind was more character driven, and the second one was more about just having hardcore matches and being funny, kind of like a goofier character, more of a face, I would say. Not to talk about Hell in a Cell, not to talk about all that, but to talk about the guy he won the WWF WWE Championship from, The Rock, right? So, we're back to Mankind. I'd say there are two versions of Mankind. And in this version of Mankind, who's he working with? The Rock. And he wins the WWE Championship. He has a big feud, and then The Rock wins it back from him in a rough moment for him, the Royal Rumble and all the chair shots, but he put The Rock, helped put him on the map even more. All these guys were guys when they worked with Mick, but he made them even more. Like it was essentially like I can't remember who said it, but he was the measuring stick. If you could hang with him, uh, you know, look good in a mat, Mick will make you look good essentially. and he did every single time, and that's crazy. Like how many guys can say that, like, while looking good himself, or putting himself in dangerous situations, being the hardcore legend, cementing his legacy, he elevated each of those guys to even bigger heights, and those guys are the biggest stars in the history of WWE. Minus Hulk Hogan, um, or John Cena. Like Undertaker, boom, made him look better. Stone Cold, boom, made him look better. Triple H made him look better. The Rock made him look better. And he did it with all different characters. He didn't do it with the same thing. He did it with, you know, a different version of Mankind, or Dude Love, or Cactus Jack. This is crazy. It's so impressive. Not only that, though, as he starts to wind down in WWE, he's not even just any of those three characters. He's just himself. He's Mick Foley. He becomes so beloved that he just is Mick Foley. And then he gets into a WrestleMania main event. He's working with The Rock, Triple H, Big Show, and I don't know, that wasn't a great match, but still, I mean, he's the main event match, um, as himself. It's insane. Not only as himself, to take it a step further, not even playing a character, playing as himself, he has two notable, he elevated two future stars who are now current legends. Think about, like, Randy Orton. Randy Orton's legend killer gimmick. I could still see, like, Randy Orton spitting in his face, right? I still see that. He made Orton look better. Now Orton, he's, a legend. I'm not saying that's because of Mick Foley. I'm just saying, once again, Mick Foley is, if you could look good with him, you're gold. Um, Edge, WrestleMania 22, another one. Um, the table spot, seeing the flaming table. It's crazy to think of, right? Like, again, he's different characters. He's himself, and he is putting everything he has on the line. His legacy. He's just, he's set, but he wants to improve. He wants to get better, and not only that, he's losing. He loses all those feuds, I believe, and yet he's a living legend. So when I saw that on Dark Side of the Ring, I was just kind of like, um, it was sad in a sense, like that Mick thought that the one thing, people would remember him for is just Hell in a Cell. And don't get me wrong, that moment with the Undertaker is crazy. It'll live forever. It's scary to watch back, but yeah, I mean, it's a surreal moment. But still, all the other stuff he did, whether it be either version of Mankind, whether it be Dude Love, whether it be Cactus Jack, whether it be himself, I mean, it's pretty legendary. I mean, the him winning the world championship is one of the best moments in Raw, and that took everybody, right? The whole thing with DX, and the corporation, and then Stone Cold coming up, but still, people were genuinely happy to see Mankind win the championship. People were genuinely happy to see Mick really at any point now. So all those things, all the characters, Mankind working with Undertaker, working with The Rock, putting, hell, those feuds, Dude Love, Stone Cold, The Rock, or excuse me, Cactus Jack with Triple H, and then Mick Foley later towards the end of that WWE career with guys like Randy Orton and Edge. He just made everybody look better. And again, think of any wrestler. So not even just the character thing. Not think of any wrestler who, no matter what, it was like they always, the feud was seemingly always memorable, and he always made everybody look better. There's a lot of guys that might come close, but Mick is one of, if not the best ones at that. And I think really that should also be his legacy. Is not just being the hardcore legend. He made the product look good. He made the people that he worked with look better, and I think that's a testament to him as well. So, just something I wanted to mention. Just wanted to bring back for this episode. This is the first of hopefully many more to come. Again, I'm not going to put a schedule on it. I think I mentioned in the previous episode the same thing, because I don't want to say, hey, I'm going to do it at this time, and then it doesn't happen. So just the things pop up in the wrestling world, I'll be making an episode. And I look forward to doing many more of these. I'm glad to be back once again. So, hope you enjoyed this episode of Wrestling Pops. If there's any more Mick Foley information that I should know about, you want to tell me about, put it in the comments. If there's any wrestling information, period, if there's anything, just funny memes, joke, whatever, put that in the comments. Let me know as well. Um, I hope you enjoyed the episode. You can find it future episodes here, YouTube. Hoping to go more places. I think it's on Audible as well, and Google Podcasts. But wherever you're listening from, I appreciate it. And I hope you guys have a good day, and I'll see you next time.